Gagan, another piece of news broke today. Are you ready to lock up a quarterback off the block here?
Yes, hit me, man. What do we got?
Well, the quarterback that didn't make the Pro Bowl for the Ravens this year, Lamar Jackson, will be being exclusively franchise tagged, which prevents teams from signing him, and will also keep him stuck in Baltimore one more year. Do you like that they did this, or do you think that this is just them clinging on to somebody that doesn't want to be there? I mean, we already saw him not want to come back, or so it looked like. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I'm not sure where to really see this from, right? So do I see it from the player? Do I see it from the team? Or do I see it from the fan, right? Before the fan, by the fan. This really reminds me of when Washington did this to Kirk Cousins, but they did it to him consecutive years, right? So this, honestly, I mean, if you're Lamar, if you play it out, you're still risking it again. Ultimately, Lamar has the ability to do so. He sat out the end of this season. Do you sit out another season?
I think that's an interesting take. I guess I would just continue on with that statement and say, well, I think the option there of him sitting out is definitely a real possibility. I'd argue more that this was the move by a Ravens organization that does, in fact, want to keep Lamar Jackson around. I think that they're going to use this offseason as this extended offseason now that he will not be a free agent as a chance to be able to try to reach him on that number to keep him in Baltimore. My only question and concern is that relationship already severed? Is there a want from Lamar Jackson to come back because he's already given you opportunity and after opportunity after opportunity to meet him while he was still on your team and committed, and now he's shown that maybe I don't want to be in Baltimore anymore. The signs are there. I just think, man, I don't know how much longer he wants to be there. If you're him, yeah, maybe I come back and play it out on a franchise tag, and then I head out of town and head to maybe a New York City.
Ultimately, Forr, we see this happen every few years with, lots of teams, right? And ultimately, the dilemma here is the locker room, right? It's team chemistry. Half the locker room is for Lamar, half the locker room feels deserted by Lamar, right? And so ultimately, it's, all parties are at fault, right? Lamar is at fault in the eyes of his fans and in the eyes of his teammates. But at the same time, I mean, the same people can look at the Baltimore Ravens front office and say the same thing, right? Ultimately, what this came down to was I felt like there were rumors that he was going to be the highest paid quarterback or right up there, but he turned it down, right? So I'm not sure what contract he really, really wanted, but here we are, right? It's been 2 years.
It's been 2 years of this offseason drama, this regular season drama. Sign Lamar, will they not sign Lamar? I'm honestly over it. I think that this was a smart move for the organization because they don't want to be left with nothing. I think they're going to look to rework this deal to get him signed long term. I could see somewhere 4 to maybe 6 years is what they're probably aiming for. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, then you do have that risk of a running quarterback, right? Signed to a long-term deal hasn't always worked out best, right?
Yeah, agreed. But I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we've seen Joe Burrow come back from a terrible leg injury, and he's been just fine. However, Burrow's game is very different. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, here's the thing, right? If we look at this pure fact, the fact of the matter is Baltimore needs Lamar more than Lamar needs Baltimore, right? There's only a handful of electrifying quarterbacks that we've ever seen, let alone in the league right now. The fact that the Ravens have not gotten this done is honestly a travesty because they may have cost themselves and their fans the Super Bowl this recent year, right?
They certainly had a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. Obviously it was very tough with how their season ended. And that division is extremely tough as well. Let's not forget that. I don't think the Ravens want to become that seller team yet. If they lose Lamar Jackson, they are definitely the seller team in their division. So, I think this was a smart move overall. If you are a fan of the Ravens, you're doing what you can to keep him there just yet another year. Hopefully, they're able to work something out for both parties. Or maybe Lamar's willing to, fight for what he wants. I don't know what that is. If it is to be a Raven, awesome. Looks like he's going to be there another year.
Yeah, I think my big takeaway from this is ultimately what they did was they put a Band-Aid on the situation, right? The ship is still leaking water, and we got to figure this out, right? So we either get off the ship or we fix the ship. And I don't think they ultimately did that. And quite honestly, man, we got to talk about this. Every year, every team is different, right? So the Baltimore Ravens team that was good this year, well, another year goes by, and all your players are another year older, right? And quite honestly, Baltimore really outperformed their expectations, right? The last several games, they still won and they still made the playoffs. And quite honestly, they pushed Cincinnati to the brink, right? So they had that game. They outplayed them. Cincinnati had a miraculous, highly improbable 99-yard fumble recovery return, right? But, I mean, Huntley had that game won, so maybe that's why he's in the Pro Bowl.
I mean, I understand exactly where you're coming with that take. And I actually was kind of thinking, if you are the NFL landscape here, you're all the other NFL teams. Are you bummed out that Lamar wasn't able to hit free agency this year? If you needed a quarterback, I mean, the short answer is yes. But then, you're going to have to pay this man. And it's interesting the Ravens are not wanting to pay him. I just find that really, really interesting. They're a smart organization. Is it the running factor? We just saw Kyler Murray even get paid. Like, what's the deal here, right? So I guess my question is, if you are, if you're Lamar Jackson, where would you have ended up that's going to offer you more money than what Baltimore was willing to offer you? Is it a desperate organization that doesn't know how to win? Is it like a New York Jets, or could you have seen him ending up somewhere that would have put him in an overall better situation?
Yeah, and one thing that I feel like we should mention for the listeners, this is kind of a well-known rumor and innuendo around the league, right? But Lamar's own quarterbacks coach at Baltimore has been said to essentially hint at Lamar's work ethic and his inability to get in the film room, right? Whereas I don't know how much to believe that, because I would say up until this year and up until him feeling disrespected by the team, he was the hardest working quarterback, right? I mean, we forget he won the MVP just 2 years back, right? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that would blow my mind hearing that, because he's shown me nothing but improvement every year. I was not a Lamar Jackson fan coming out of college. That's no secret. I thought he was going to be one of the biggest draft busts when they took him. And honestly, couldn't throw a football his first year. The improvement from just year 1 to year 2 to year 3, it's been incredible to watch. Honestly, Lamar Jackson's one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league now. I had him ranked second on our quarterback rankings hierarchy / list that we made. And, it's one of those things, man, that I'm just a big Lamar Jackson guy. And the improvement is honestly my favorite thing about him. He is constantly improving and evolving his game.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else we can really discuss on this, right? Ultimately, it comes down to he's unsigned, but he's temporarily signed with the franchise tag.
He's wanted, but temporarily wanted. It's weird all around. I will say this. There's also a weird little thing with this exclusive franchise tag that doesn't allow teams to come grab him. But what it does allow for the Ravens to do is not allow him to just walk out the door without any compensation, right? So they could work to potentially get him off their books and trade him on the franchise tag, I believe, with the exclusive franchise tag term. So there would be options there. Maybe they deal him for some picks, and then that team is then able to rework a deal. I think there's some options there that aren't being talked about yet.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm shocked that this rule is still in fact, because I do think at some point, maybe it's this next bargaining agreement, I don't know why players allow the franchise tag, right? And I think it has to do with a deeper issue in the NFL, is a lot of these contracts are not guaranteed, right? There's a lot of incentives. There's a lot of factors that go into these contracts, right? And it's interesting because hockey contracts are guaranteed, NBA contracts are guaranteed, baseball contracts are guaranteed, but the NFL still doesn't have that.
It's funny that it's called a franchise tag, because if you were franchise player who want to sign you for long term. And it should honestly be called the desperation tag, because it's used by organizations when they want to have you for one more year, but they don't want to pay you over a set number of years like you're worth. So I completely agree with you. I wish that the franchise tag would be eliminated, or at least be able to be taken to maybe arbitration, if that makes sense, similar to baseball, where you meet with somebody and then they're able to decide on what your worth truly is. So then they have to meet that number, because it's just that teams are abusing the franchise tag at this point, and I honestly don't expect it to be around much longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's already slated against the player to begin with, right? So we got to see what we can do here. But hey, who knows? Maybe we put it out there and maybe someone looks into this, right?
Hey, man, come on. Remember all the times in Madden when you're playing Madden and you can't agree to that long-term contract with that player that you want? They reject your final offer. They're about to head to free agency. And so you go, you know what? Franchise tag. You slap it on them, man. That's exactly what happens with this tag. That's the only time it's ever used. The only person I've ever seen that's probably happy about being franchise tagged might have been Kirk Cousins. But other than that, I don't know if it's ever been used positively in the league. So I'm a massive fan of getting the franchise tag out of the league. I'm glad to hear you're on the similar take, man.